Hello, I'm Angela.
And I'm Marie, the second half of this mother and daughter team.
Welcome to Chakra Checkups.
We're here to guide you on your quest for spiritual knowledge and enlightenment.
Okay, Mom, I want to just dive right in today. I think a lot of us are going to be curious to hear a lot more about your experience with ayahuasca and the ceremonies and your trips to Brazil. And so I want to start off with what got you into drinking ayahuasca.
Well, legend and they say that ayahuasca finds you. You're invited by the spirit of the ayahuasca, and that you don't have to go looking for it. When the time is right, it'll come to you. And in my case, that actually happened. I had a friend who wanted to store books at my house, and I said, "Sure, you can put your little bookcase over there by the wall." And she loaded it up with her books. And I had just gone through a divorce, and I was sitting meditating and thinking, I really wish there was a way I could just be a little bit more in my heart chakra and have a little more open heart. And a book literally flew off the bookcase about 3.5 feet and landed with a thump, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. What did that?
What is this book about?
What is this book about? And I go pick it up, and right on the cover, it talks, well, it's the back cover, but it talks about this guy opening up his heart chakra. And I'm like, damn,
Here's your sign.
Yeah. And so I start reading about it, and it's about him drinking ayahuasca in South America. And I thought, this is really trippy. So I start reading this book, and my friend Sandy, who was her books, she came by, and I said, I'm reading your book. And I said, boy, I would really like to drink this tea. And she said, well, that's easy enough to do. How about Friday?
So you were able to just jump right in right away.
Well, yeah, I wasn't really planning on, I was thinking, like, someday, not
this weekend.
not 4 days later. But I said, well, okay, why not? And so she arranged for me to have a meeting. You had to have a meeting ahead to talk to somebody. And I went to Ashland, Oregon, and had this meeting with the members of the Santo Daime, and they interviewed me, and I, seemed sane enough to them. And, then that Friday I was in a ayahuasca ceremony for the first time.
Wow. Okay. So, and for people that don't know, what is ayahuasca?
Well, ayahuasca is very interesting because it's two plants, and the history of it, from what I was told when I was in Brazil, the two plants are more than 1,000 miles apart. They don't grow together anywhere in the forest. One is like a highland plant that's similar to a coffee. It's a member of the coffee family. It's called a cicatria, and it's grows in a hilly, semi-arid kind of area. The other one is a vine, Banisterius caapi, and it grows deep, deep in the rainy, swampy, jungle. And according to the legend, the South American Indians that were killed by white people that had come to get their gold and, convert them to religion or whatever they came for, the Indians that were killed by that decided not to go on into the light, but rather to stay on the astral as a kind of group of healing shaman. Wow. And they came to the plant, divas, looking for a solution. And then they got together, and these two plants, and then came to a shaman and said, put these two plants together to heal the white man, basically, is what the message was.
Oh, interesting.
And so they started mixing these up. And when I went to Brazil to see this fabulous medium, Baixinha, she had told me in the Santo Daime, there is a kind of a chant that says, a daime força, daime luz. In it sort of roughly translates to give me the power, give me the light, or give me force, give me light.
Mm.
And she said long before she had ever seen any actual daime, a angel had come to her and said, "This is what you want to say. Daime força, daime luz." So she was holding her hands around water and saying this, then handing it to people, and they would start purging, and then their chakras would open, and they would have these experiences and see things, and you know, and, she was like, "Wow, this really works." And then she told me later they actually came with her to her with some actual daime and to show her to her, and she said, "This is much better than the water." So, it's got some interesting history behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. This book jumped off the shelf with you, and then you were invited to a ceremony. Did you go? What was that experience like?
It was quite incredible experience. You line up, you have to wear all white, of course, and the Santo Daime is a kind of combination between a kind of a Catholic regimented type of ceremony and a bit like a white ubanda with the drum playing music and drums and some dancing and of course singing in Brazilian Portuguese, and I know no Brazilian Portuguese, so that was kind of
Challenging?
a little strange and challenging. But and then you line up and they give you a little glass and you drink this drink, which for most people don't find that very delicious. It's very vinegary and it's very pungent. It has a very strong smell, and a lot of people when they first drink it, and maybe some people for quite a while after after they've been drinking for a long time, uh, it causes them to throw up. So they're not too happy about that either. But at any rate, I drank it, and after I would say less than 2 minutes, I heard a voice said, "Little sister, let me sing to you about the flowers," just as clear as a bell. And then I saw a 3 foot high musical scale shoot across the room. And then the voice said, "Don't follow the music, follow the overtones." And then I saw, and I'm not musically inclined at all. Um, and then I saw this purple light weaving in and out of this musical scale in a kind of what looked to me like a random pattern. More detail than I'd ever seen it.
Okay.
It was just stunning, you know. And a lot of things that I had seen and I questioned, it made a lot more sense. It also opened up a lot of questions because it's like, you know, there was a lot more of everything, So then I'm like, wow, well, what is this? And what is this? And oh, what is this? And this is a lot of information, a lot of information. And I think that's what stuns people is that now they're downloading so much information that they almost don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, what
But
kind of things opened up for you that you were more interested about?
well, I was able to see how very intimately how energetics work for people when they're happy, when they're sad, when they release energy, when they heal. Where does that energy go? How does that work? When they have an entity and when that entity goes into the light in a major healing, how does that work? Or if it doesn't, where does that entity go? I was able to see uh, how nature spirits and other type of spirits weave in and out of our lives in terms of people talk about having their power animal and how those would weave in and out. For some reason in the ayahuasca, the um the black panther is very energy was very attracted to me, and there were times over the years that I was drinking it, sometimes that panther would jump on the sofa next to me and someone else was between us, and you could actually feel the impact when it would hit the sofa.
Whoa. So there
It just
actually are like spirit animals.
yes, this very strong spirit animals. I was in one ayahuasca ceremony when the panther jumped into my body and it pushed me out of my body, and I was standing there looking at it going, "This is very different having panther in your body." I wasn't really freaked about it. I mean, I was a little bit like, "This is really, really different," and I'm not sure what I'm gonna do here, but, I'm just kind of watching this, and a lot of other people were watching this, and then the panther went out and I went back in my body. But when I went back in my body, a lot of people just moved away from me. And there were some people in that group that never actually would come near me after that.
Why do you think that is? Could they see what was going on? Or
I
they
have
just
no
felt
idea.
like it was really weird?
It was really weird. I guess for them it was really weird. I don't really know what they saw, but it was interesting. It was not a lot freaks me out, so it was interesting. I was, like I said, I wasn't scared. Um, I found it fascinating, but
Yeah, that's quite a different experience.
when I was in Ashland, I would ask people about the panther, and they didn't. No one seemed to know anything about it. Then when I got to Brazil, they said the panther is the daime.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, well, how come they don't say that in Ashland? Because they were trying to keep it a little bit more religiously oriented and a little bit more oriented to like sort of Catholic, and they didn't want to say that. But in Brazil, they said, of course, that's the daime. That's the daime coming to see you.
Did they not wanna say it or did they not know?
I think they did not want to say it. It was just a little too, I don't know, jungle or something.
Okay.
But in Brazil, Bichinha said, of course, that's the daime. What? Of course you see it. Why wouldn't you see the panther? And I'm like, well, it only
Why wouldn't you?
so, I found that very interesting. And in one ceremony, the panther came in the room and just was walking around the room, looking and looking and looking, and his tail twitching, and his big yellow eyes. And I was watching this. It was so vivid, so crystal, and turned into this huge shaman.
Okay.
And then the shaman was walking around the room just looking, and you know and then came over and was looking at me, and staring into his eyes, and it just was very intense and very vivid, so crystal clear that if I was able to paint, I would love to paint a picture of how stunningly beautiful and amazing seeing these beings are.
Yeah.
That just it's just I don't think anything psychedelic could be that beautifully stunning, really. It's just amazing.
So, how long were you in Ashland doing these ceremonies before you decided to go to Brazil, and what made you decide to go to Brazil?
I was in Ashland, well, I was involved with the Ashland group for almost 6 years, but I would only had been with them for about, oh, maybe a year. And when I heard about this woman in Brazil, and then I decided to go. And mainly it was because there was a lot of questions I had and I wasn't really getting any answers. And I decided I I wanted to, I wanted to go, more to the source. And and I was glad I did. Things were much different in Brazil. Um, it was a lot less formal there. When you go to Brazil, when they do daime, they bring their whole family. They bring their little children. It's like a family thing. It's not just the adults, and
So it's
so
way less religious is
it's
and
yes, it's the fathers they'll be in a ceremony and they're dancing and they're holding their little 2-year old, and then they get tired, they hand it to the mom, and then the mom's dancing with the baby. And I even saw one baptism where this baby was crying, 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 and then they took a little white cloth and they dipped it in some daime, and then they put it on the baby's mouth. The baby was sucking on it, and all of a sudden he stopped crying and his eyes got big and he looked all around and he smiled at everybody,
wow.
and everybody started laughing.
So even the young children are drinking this tea there.
Oh, yes, quite a bit. As soon as they can walk, they'll walk up and get some daime when they want to. In Brazil, you kind of drink it when you want to.
Yeah.
And children, it's up to their parents. You know, they can decide if they want them to or not. But I saw many 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year olds drinking daime,
Wow.
and many people that said they'd been drinking daime since they were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. Uh, and they're
And
very
how,
happy people.
yeah, I was going to say, how does that, I mean, it differs so much from our mentality in the States. What are those people like? They're just a lot more open, happy, and spiritual.
Incredibly loving. They're the most loving people I've ever seen. The men were the most loving men I have ever seen. The way they're just were hugging their children to them and singing with them and with their wives, and they're just it was just a very, very much more loving and open and happy and smiling. I just didn't have an experience of ever seeing so many happy, smiling men as I did in Brazil. They just
Wow.
seemed much less uptight than the men here. Seem so tense and so worried all the time, and they just don't seem that way there. Um, and it's interesting because they don't have a lot of money. A lot of times they don't have any money. I went one time with some people, and one of the guys in our group was invited. They said, come with us, we're going to go play softball for the day. And he said, well, I can't go because I don't have any money. And they laughed and they said, we don't have any money half the year, and we
Yeah.
we play softball all the time. You don't need any money, just come with us. Yeah. So they're just the I think the spiritualism and the Santo Daime makes them just very loving people. It was interesting on one of my trips. I wanted to bring some gifts to Bashinya, and I had noticed that there a lot of what they cooked in was these really kind of marginal aluminum pots. So I decided I would bring a lot of nice stainless steel pots, the kind that stack one inside another. That way I could get a lot in one box and
Hmm.
bring it to Brazil. So I bought a whole bunch of them in bowls and pots that would go one inside each other. And then I thought I still need something to pack them in. So I bought uh, about $150 worth of organic almonds, and I put them in baggies, and I used that as packing material.
Okay.
And I packed the boxes with organic almonds because I heard they really like almonds there.
Yeah.
And I gave them to Bashina, and she was really happy about that. And I gave it to her in this town of Morganlick. And a day and a half later, we went to Lumiere, which Illumination is the name of the town.
Okay.
And we're in Lumiere, and we're kind of touring the town, looking at gardens, looking at the kindergarten, just kind of doing this tour. And everywhere I went, people were reaching in their pocket and saying, "Hey, I've got some almonds. Would you like an almond?" And
How far away are the towns?
it was about 60 miles, you know. And I
Wow. So, like, they're just sharing all of the almonds you brought down.
everywhere. They like when we went to the school, they said, "We have almond cake. Would you like almond cupcake?" and and then that evening when we had a ceremony, we've got almond this and we've got almond that, and I'm like, I've been offered these almonds back like by 20 people in a day and a half.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I thought, would that happen in the United States? Would that ever happen here? I mean, it was.
No, probably one person would eat the pack of almonds and be lucky if they shared it with, someone nearby.
But somehow Sheena got those almonds everywhere in the community. I mean, everybody had seemed to have a pocket full of almonds. It was amazing.
Wow.
It was really
Yeah,
amazing.
it's amazing that it would circulate that fast.
Yeah, it was stunning. Really, faster than the mail,
Faster than the mail, yeah.
the Almond Express. But
So, what were the ceremonies like besides the families being involved?
they're very beautiful. They do one during the full moon at once a month. that's really a beautiful shamanic ceremony, and they have a it's part, well, like what's called white ubanda. It's a ubanda that sort of has a religion, more like a religious bent to it. And ubanda, a lot of people think ubanda is about a whole bunch of gods, but actually that's not accurate. Ubanda is about thinking about all the different aspects of God. If God was in a mountain, what would he look like? Well, he might look like a guy with a beard and a craggy guy and be kind of gruff. If he was in the volcano, what would he be? You know, he might be big and tough and be all about justice. If he was in the sea, would be, it might be a beautiful woman and, you know, be like a mother. So they have named over time this, all this parts of nature as different kind of personalities. And it's a 12-hour ceremony where they have a whole bunch of conga drummers, really amazing musicians, and they're in a big semicircle. And Bashinya would come out, and then they would start with one aspect of God. So they'd say, we're going to invite nature spirits from come. Now we're going to do the ocean, you know, and they do this for 12 hours, going through all these different aspects of spirit.
Wow.
And it's very beautiful. And at one point they do the children. And when they do the children, everybody has to get up and act like a child, and they throw hard candy all over the floor. And then we sang the hokey pokey in Brazilian. Put your right foot in, put your right foot out. You know, wave your hands about. You know, so I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it's also really serious spirituality in a lot of ways. And the church that we went to, they had built the whole thing with 100% with people's donations, and most of the donations were, I'll bring a board, or I'll bring a bag of nails, or I'll bring a bucket of cement,
Yeah,
literally like that. And they built this huge church. I mean, it was really big. uh,
that's really cool.
and and you know, so it was their building and their church. And when we went there, you know, I said, oh, I want to make a big donation, and they said, no, you can't. We
You can only bring material or something to improve the church?
Well, no, they said you can only the we have a maximum amount that you can donate, and you can't donate more than a certain amount of Brazilian dollars, which amounted to about $12.50.
Wow.
Because they didn't want someone coming and laying down a bunch of money and being like the big shot. They wanted it to be
Uh-huh.
the same for everybody.
Okay, well, that's actually really nice.
Yeah, so you could go for nothing, or you can give them $2, or if you want to, you can give them $12, but that was it.
Wow.
So the whole thing, everything about it was just really lovely and really amazing.
Are there different types of ceremonies, or were they all mostly like that?
No, there are different types. I mean, there's some that are very healing ceremonies. They did one ceremony that's called an Archangel Michael ceremony. And it's a very serious healing ceremony. And it generates so much white light that it's we came a bit late, and we walked in, and it was like a big washing machine going back and forth, the energy, and it was like white light going swish 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 swish. And when you walked into it, it's like, wow. And we went from outside and walked through that ring of white light that was going back and forth. And it almost knocked me down. It was just so intense and
Mm.
so stunningly beautiful. um and then at one point, all of a sudden, we could see, where I could see Archangel Michael was went clear through the ceiling. Must have been 30 feet tall, just this huge angelic being. And anybody that had like dark energies or entities or anything, they started to leave a lot of these people. And it was like a tornado was going up at the top, and they were getting sucked literally off people and going up into the white light. And some of them were dropping out of off of people, and kind of like rats were or cockroaches were scurrying
Wow.
out to the sides of the church.
And there was a lot of people in the ceremony.
There was a lot of people. Most of these ceremonies have more than 100 people in them.
Okay, wow.
So you're in a big group, and it's just a and everyone's singing, and they're, because you stay in your place and you sing. Sometimes someone will get sick. Not a lot, but they have a couple windows where they put plastic on the inside and the outside of the window. And you just go over, throw up out the window loud, and then come back and sit down. I thought that was, well, I guess
One
it
way to do
works.
it.
I-
And
i- In one church, they just put down sawdust on the floor, and they don't want you to even get out of your chair. Just throw open the sawdust, and they come along with a little thing you use to clean up dog poo, and sweep it in there, and then walk off and throw down more sawdust.
wow.
They don't think much of it. They're pretty used to the whole thing.
So what did the Archangel Michael look like besides being 30 feet tall?
Well, it looks like a really just kind of a big, giant guy, kind of more on the stocky side than lean. I wouldn't say he was skinny. He was more kind of built, stocky. Um,
Okay.
Kind of wearing, he's all in white color, so he's just all white. So it's white on white on white, but had sort of a not really armor, but clothing that was somewhat like, in layered, sort of like armored type of clothing. He did have a big staff with brilliant blue light, and he had hair that was longer than, not cut real short, was kind of down to shoulder length hair,
Uh-huh.
but obviously he was all 100% in white light, so it wasn't any color or definition other than white.
And did he have wings or anything? You
No
said he was
wings.
came out of the ceiling.
No, no wings. And but the thing is, there was a lot of energy coming off his heart, and if you looked at him from the front, you could see this energy moving in a circle behind him, and it did have a kind of wing look to it. It was like a cloud that would be moving in a circle, the right one moving in the right way, and the left one, moving in the opposite way. So it did look kind of like two wings. I could see where people would get the idea of wings from that.
Kind of like an arc of white light.
Yeah, yeah, just a couple of big sort of swirls of white light behind his shoulders on both sides, from just the energy moving off, his heart chakra from the back. So I could see where, I was looking at that for a long time, and I thought, I wonder if that's why people get the idea that angels have wings, just from seeing that kind
Yeah,
of a
probably. I would assume
that
so.
image,
So
but
that was a big healing ceremony. What other types of healings did you see there?
well, a lot of people come just to resolve issues or things that they have, and there are some times when they'll do a kind of a lay down ceremony where it's more serious. Usually it's in smaller groups. You'll drink ayahuasca, and or it's actually Santo Daime there, and they'll go and they'll have a mat, and you just lay down quietly. There's not necessarily any drumming or music or anything, or maybe very little. And
Kind of more like a meditation
kind of like
circle.
a deep meditation, and just, kind of be with yourself and process whatever you need to process. And then there's some that are just kind of very eclectic. Whatever comes up, kind of comes up. And um, sometimes that will bring out different things with different people.
Being in Brazil, since you've been able to see a lot of these things all your life and them being more spiritual, was it nice being around other people that could other people see the same things that you were seeing?
Yes, it was actually really fabulous, because I was able to talk about the different beings that I was seeing, and not only did other people see them, sometimes they had drawings of them. They even had some postcards that different artists had painted of them. And a couple times I'd say, "Oh, I saw, this particular Indian," and they would say they would pull out postcards and say, "Was it this one
Yeah.
or was it that one?"
So when you were in Brazil, what were the accommodations like in your schedule? How often did you do these ceremonies?
Well, the first time when I went, I was staying with Bashinya, either privately in her home, which was very small and pretty sparse, or I was staying with friends that she arranged to have accommodate me for a day or two, and I was there for about 30 days. I spent 10 days at one of the churches there and stayed in their. They have guest accommodations. The second two times I went for the 30-day workshop, we stayed at Morgenlick. It's Morning Light in German. It's owned by some people that the husband's Brazilian Portuguese and the wife is German. And it's an amazing estate. You can look it up actually on the internet. It's a Morgenlick resort in Bon Jardim in Brazil, and it's a beautiful place. They serve their own food. They have, oh, I think something like 27 bedrooms and 3 stories in the subtropical forest. There's hundreds of hummingbirds flying everywhere and flowers everywhere, and it smells like perfume everywhere. It's just incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful.
And they had a giant.
And what were the other people like that were there? Where were they from?
All over. People came from all over the world, actually. Sometimes there were big groups that were mainly from, the Ashen area, but people would join from all over. People from Germany or Switzerland or wherever. People come all over to see Brasília or to go to Brazil to drink Santo Daime or ayahuasca, because Brazil has an incredible amount of mediums and people that have very advanced mediumship, and there's nothing like being amongst that, especially when you're trying to develop and understand who you are. The ceremonies, when you're in a workshop for 28 days and you're drinking ayahuasca every day, it's sort of like one long big ceremony.
Wow, yeah.
It kind of never stops, but it also becomes somewhat more casual. You sometimes it starts pretty much on a schedule, but it ends in a little bit more of a broken up fashion. And I was in one ceremony where some people were leaving it and some people were still hanging in there. And so I had walked outside onto one of the higher decks, and I was sitting there, and there was another lady that was a medium, and she was there. And we were looking down to one deck below. There was one of the shaman was trying to do a healing on a woman that had a giant dragon entity in her,
Whoa.
and the dragon entity was hooked into her by its tail, let's hooked right into her heart chakra, and we wouldn't see it, and then he would be working on her and smudging her and throwing energy at her, and then it would come out, but it would still be hooked from her chest, and it looked about to be about 6 feet long, and its big black wings. And it was interesting sitting next to another medium, and we both were looking at the exact same thing at the exact same time, because later we were talking about this, and to me it was more black, and to her it was more gray, and to me it was more bony, and to her it was more, softer and more shiny. It just, there was differences.
And do you think that's because of maybe your own personal bias or lenses that you're seeing through?
I think that's exactly it. I think that, it made me realize that there are always filters. No matter what you're looking at, you always are looking through your own filter to some degree. I keep working all the time. I'm always saying to my angels, I really just want to see exactly the way it is, not look through my bias, not look through my filter. I want to just see things very super clear. But I'm also aware that I might be seeing it through some prejudice, some filter, something like that. And when you can compare with somebody, then you go, wow, okay, we were pretty close though.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see a dragon because I've only seen dragon entities a few times and they've always been very negative. They're not happy like the magic dragon or a beautiful dragon or anything like that. They're very dark energy.
And what was happening to this person when she was getting a healing?
Well, when the dragon was almost out of her, she would just like stand up straight and say, "Yes, yes, I can do this." I know I can heal, and she'd be really positive. And then it would sink back down into her, and she'd literally say, "Oh, it's hopeless." You know, I can't, I can't. I'm too tired to do this anymore. I don't want to try.
Oh, wow.
And the shaman just kept at it, and finally this thing completely left her. And I guess that a lot of times that is how it is. You're attached to one of these things, and it has a certain part of you. And that's one thing we go for healings, to get rid of these things forever, get rid of these thought forms and these dark, really dark thought forms, so that they're not taking over our consciousness,
Not literally dragging us down.
not literally dragging us down into hopelessness.
Yeah.
I in one of the ceremonies, this woman was talking about this big issue, and she asked Bashinya, "Can I heal this?" And Bashinya said, "Absolutely, this is going to heal." And she's like, "Oh, that's so good. How long do you think it'll take?" And Bashinya said, 27 years.
It's kind of specific.
And this woman started crying, and she said, wait a minute. And the woman, Bashinya's assistant, this man next to her, said, "This is very good news. You
Yeah.
know, what have you done in the last 27 years?" I guess it's a perspective. Again, it's a perspective.
Well, I guess better than it not being able to be healable at all. It's like
Yes, that's right.
eventually I will get better.
Uh, Another, 24 more to go. But you know, she didn't lie to her. You know,
Yeah, yeah. How did she
it's
know how long it would take?
I well, she's fabulous. She's a fabulous medium. She's amazing. You know, I, every time I would think something, and she would respond to me almost immediately. I was in the middle of the night coughing, and I thought, "Oh God, I wish I had something for this cough." And about less than 10 minutes later, I hear this knock on the door, and she every time she ever responded to me, she'd always echo back the words I said, and she said, "Here's something for your cough," and I just like the last part of my sentence back to me, and hands me this cup of tea. So I guess I woke her up in the middle of the night with my thinking, and she ran in and made me a cup of tea in the middle of the night, and brought it to me.
Wow. So she's just highly telepathic to anybody that was near her.
Exactly. I was having a horrible time in this relationship that I was in, and I was thinking, I was in the middle of a work in Brazil, and I was thinking, I just want something that can resolve this relationship once and for all. And Bashinya got up from the altar and walked back to where they did the daimi, where they were serving it. And I remember seeing her do that. And I thought, I wonder why she's doing that. She doesn't usually drink daimi in the middle of a thing. When that ended, she walked over to me with a little bottle of daimi, and echoed back what I had said to her. When you want to resolve this relationship, drink this bottle. So I put it in my suitcase, and I brought it back to the United States. And then, this person I was with was being one day just really difficult. And I said, "You know what? We're going to drink this on Saturday." And he said, "Well, we can't do it alone. I said, fine, I'll invite some friends. So we invited these friends, and we, poured this into 4 little glasses, and we started to drink it. And, we're like all being very serious and trying to be very respectful. And he just like set down his glass and started being a complete ass. And we all just looked at him, and I just said, this is totally over, you know,
Just like that.
just like that. And then I thought, that's exactly what I asked for. Complete clarity. It's over.
Wow.
So it worked. Not exactly the way I was thinking, but it absolutely did exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. Well, and bringing Santo Daime into the United States from Brazil can't exactly be very legal.
Well, actually, it's not illegal because it's actually a religious tea. It's not a controlled substance. You know,
Okay.
it's controversial. You know,
Okay.
there was a man that was with the Santo Daime in Spain, and he got questioned with a quart of it. He had a quart of Santo Daime, and they said, he kept saying it's not a drug, it's tea. And then they finally said, okay, if it's tea, drink it, and then we won't arrest you.
Oh my God.
So he had to drink an entire quart. Normally, you drink about 2 ounces of Santo Daime, and that's plenty for anybody. But he had to drink a quart.
Okay.
So he
And
drank.
then leave the airport and function.
Well, what he did is he drank a quart, then he called all his friends and said, you all have to come right now. But he was fine. It is not toxic. It's not going to kill you. It's not like there's an overdose, rate per se, although that could make you throw up a lot, and you might have a lot more healing than you were planning on that evening. But he was fine.
Yeah, it wouldn't give you any sort of hangover or anything like that either, would it?
Like I said, we drank it every day for 30 days. Sometimes we drank it 2 times in a day. I never had any kind of hangover from it.
Okay.
I never had any kind of illness from it. I actually got to the point where I didn't actually ever really throw up. I mean, I went years without throwing up, except if I got really into some sort of emotional issue, then occasionally I would. And here's an interesting thing, and I had heard about this happening, but I hadn't had it happen. And then it started happening to me. They said if you're really in love with the daime loves you back. And when I would walk up, we'd be walking in the line to get it, and it would smell like really acidic. And then as I got closer, it would change and it would smell like flowers. And even people around me would say, what's that smell? It's like smells like roses or something. And it would actually will change for you. And then when I would drink it, it was like I was drinking a strawberry Kool-Aid. It was just tasted fine.
Whoa,
And I
instead
just
of the original vinegar taste.
right. And people be looking at me going, why are you smiling?
And you're like, this is just so good.
Yeah, and that will happen. Sometimes it's like the spirit of the daime is like kind of welcoming you in a certain way. It didn't happen all the time, but it did happen occasionally. And I was glad I got to experience it because I had heard about that, but I didn't, I kind of didn't believe it. But then I became a believer. So
Wow.
the less resistance you have, then, the more pleasant it can become. But I just got so, yeah, I really just had so much respect for the plants. I actually went and talked to the plants. I went out, I was at Machina's house. She had samples of both of the plants growing. So I went and talked to them, and I went and talked to the Banisterius coppi, to the plant diva, and said, thank you. You're just such a wonderful plant, and you're just so great. Is there anything, you want or need? And the plant said, we need some calcium. We need some calcium. And then I talked to the other plant, and kind of a similar thing. So I went to Bashini and I said, I was talking to your plants, and the Banisterius and the Secatria, and the plant diva said they need calcium. And she said, come with me, come with me. And she walks me around the side of the house, and there were like 4 bags of calcium. She said that they tell that to everyone. We just have to get somebody to put it on. It's all taken care of. Don't worry about it. You know.
They're gonna be fine.
So I wasn't the only one that they told them that they needed some calcium. But, it's for soil. It's very low in calcium.
Okay.
This wasn't news to her.
Okay, so now I'm super interested in joining an ayahuasca ceremony somewhere, and there are some in the States. And when I was looking into one near where I live in Mexico, I was asking about the plants that they use, and they actually use a mushroom. But is that going to have kind of the same effect?
Well, it won't be the same energy. I can't say anything good or bad about it because I don't know that plant. Like I said, the Santo Daime, and it's has to do with these Indian shaman that put those plants together for a particular reason, for a particular healing. And I'm sure that the mushrooms have a similar type of shamanic stories involved with them,
Uh-huh.
and some sort of shamanic path with them too, which would be wise for you to investigate and find out about as part of your journey.
Yeah. So, what should people ask when they're looking to join a ceremony?
They should look for a very experienced, reputable shaman. They should know what's in their their ayahuasca, and they should get a list of ingredients, and they might even want to look up those ingredients on the internet and look them up one by one. The Santo Daime, and the Una Vegetal, they're made of just 2 plants, Banisteris caapi and Psychotria, and those two have very little side effects and work well together. But there are some groups out there that are putting extracts of nutmeg and datura in ayahuasca, and datura can cause brain damage.
Whoa.
But it's kind of very psychedelic, and I would not want to take something like that. I would never make that choice. So, and I would definitely want to know if that was in there, so I could say no. Um,
Hmm.
so it's really, really good idea to know, uh, you know, what you're doing. I would want to ask the shaman, how many ceremonies have you done?
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes somebody going into a healing, they might have very dark energy. They might have a demon with him, and are you with a shaman that can handle that?
Right.
That's important. Just like that shaman that we were with in Brazil, he handled that dragon very well, very masterfully, and it was impressive to watch.
And
And
when you're asking someone what kind of experience they have, if they can handle something like that, what answer are we looking for?
well, a lot of experience. So he says, well, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've got 1,000. you know, I've done it 1,000 times or something. Great.
Yeah.
If he says, I just took a 5-week course on shamanism and here's my certificate, I'd be worried.
Right. But just because someone's done even 100 ceremonies doesn't necessarily make them capable of handling something like that, does it?
No, not really. They really should have they should have a basis in a lot of experience. You wouldn't be able to lead one like they do in Brazil without some of those people. They've been working for 20 years and they haven't been able to lead a ceremony.
Okay.
No, it's not that easy. Now, I was told that I had the experience to lead small ceremonies when I came back to the States, and given permission by a couple of shaman and Bashinya too, but I wouldn't take on a really, really big group either,
And why is
because
that?
there's a lot that can happen, and unless you have many mediums that are experienced at one time, it's difficult to handle.
What kind of things would Bashinya do during a ceremony that was controlling the group?
Virginia would walk in. She was a teeny tiny woman, and she would walk in, and all of a sudden she would incorporate a huge light beam that I could see was like this violet light that went out from her in every direction 12 feet.
Wow.
And it was just, you could just feel it in the room. Everything just started to like electric sparks coming off of her.
Wow.
And everything then just it's like everybody just got plugged into an electric light bulb and everything started to zing up. And all the mediums started to pay attention. It's like, okay, everything is turned on now. In a way, it wasn't her. It was this huge beam of light, this huge beam of violet light that comes with her. And that's because she has been so devoted for so many years of her life doing such work that she's attracted that light being. And you can't miss that. And you can't fake that.
Yeah.
And so if a dark thing came along and she walks up to that, well, that thing's going to scurry right out of the building, or just disintegrate like a firecracker going up in dust. There's no
Yeah.
worries.
The cockroach in the spotlight scurrying away.
Exactly. Exactly. So you have no worries. Yep.
And you've also told me that she or other shaman there would pull people forward or backward depending on what they're going through in the ceremonies?
Yes, it was the way they seat it. There's like 4 or 5 rows of chairs and like 100, 200 people, and they've got these rows of chairs, or you're standing, and then the big open area in the middle. And then if somebody gets really into the power, they get incorporated, they're working with a being, they'll come out in the middle and they might be dancing or they might be spinning in a circle or something like that. Well, sometimes then people that are visiting go, well, if they're dancing, I want to dance too. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be part of this. And
Okay.
so they're kind of faking it and they'll come out. And they had this one woman that she incorporated this giant being that was sort of like a hound dog would sniff them out. It was kind of grunting and sniffing like, "Arr, arr." And she'd go up and sniff them and like, you're not genuine. And she'd take them back to their seat.
Okay.
But, but at the same time, if you were genuine, then they would bring you back out. And if every time I ever had something really strong and genuine happen to me, they would bring me into the circle. I wouldn't ask to go; they would come and get you. I had one time I was on my period, and it was like the first day, and I was actually feeling pretty awful, and I was thinking, God, I love to be here, but honestly, I just feel awful, and I just wish I could do something about this. And I was sitting there just trying to do my best and tried to sing along and just make the best of it. And this woman came out, this sweet, sweet woman that was about 35 came out and grabbed me. And then she brought me out and she took this really pretty scarf, a really long scarf that had flowers on it, and she put it around my hips and then around her hips. And she started doing this little dance, almost like a hula dance, back and forth, back and forth. And all of a sudden, all my pain and unhappiness went away. And
Wow.
suddenly I'm like, wow, I feel wonderful. And then as soon as I was thinking that, she stopped, took my hand, and just took me back and put me back in my seat. They're very tuned in. That's what's amazing about being in Brazil is that
Yeah.
they're very tuned in to everything that's going on, and they're very responsive to everything that's going on. They're not fooled by anything. They're not faking anything, and they just seem to know. They're just spot on with everything that's happening every minute.
Yeah, I think one of the complaints that I've heard from people that have joined ayahuasca ceremonies in the area here is that we have quite a bit of like tourism that comes through. So some people aren't genuine in their nature of why they want to take ayahuasca, and you get some people that just want to come and party
Yeah,
in the
that's
group.
regrettable. That can be difficult because, for one thing, they're not bringing a very clean energy to it, and it's all right. I mean, if someone gets into something, they want to do that, but it's not going to make the energy better for anybody.
Uh-huh.
A really strong ayahuasca ceremony will sometimes flush people like that out. It's funny. It's not meant to happen in a mean way, but sometimes when the energy of a strong ceremony will be moving in a certain way, in a very positive way, and if somebody is like, there to get higher, they've got some other agenda. It's like almost like the ceremony changes dimension and they stay behind, and
Huh.
you'll see them kind of pacing at the back of the room like they can't get in. Like the ceremonies.
Everybody else is feeling it but them.
Yeah, they're here and the ceremony's there, and somehow they're locked out and they can't quite figure it out, and they're get madder and madder, and they're kind of pissed off. And I've seen that. My heart goes out to him. I'm like, that poor guy.
Yeah.
Wish we could help him. Send him some love. you know, I can see he's having a bad day. But they're not getting what they want. They probably will not come back to it. They probably say that was not worth my money or whatever.
Right.
So it doesn't happen very much in Brazil because they just don't enjoy it.
Well, I know after this, I'm just going to look up tickets for Brazil for when me and you can go and join one.
I would love to go with you together. That would be amazing. It would
Yeah.
really be great. It is like there, like I said, there it's a family thing. One time this man was singing and singing and dancing, dancing with his little baby, and for almost 10 hours. I don't think I ever saw him put him down. And then he put his child down, and the baby said, "No." And everybody turned and started laughing. It's got to end sometime.
Well, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. And I can't wait for the day when I'll be screaming no to the end of ceremony.